All right, awesome. So we're going to talk about EQ, equalization. And this is not going to be explaining how to actually use the EQ that's on your board. This is just like a really quick run through of what EQ is and what it does, why you need it or don't need it in certain circumstances. So yeah, EQ has a lot of uses. Mostly you're going to be using it subtractive or additive. Subtractive is this idea of taking away bad frequencies. So a good example is like if you're listening to, say you have a guitar channel that's soloed, you're just listening to a guitar channel. It's electric guitar. So you're hearing what's coming through the board in this electric guitar channel, and maybe it sounds really good. Like maybe you've already got a pretty like clear sound, and you're hearing pretty much exactly what you want to hear from it, except maybe there's this one frequency that's peeking through every now and then. Like maybe it's a higher note and there's this weird ringing that happens. A lot of times with a lot of instruments can have these things called resonant frequencies, which is this idea of like this bad frequency, this hollow sounding frequency that kind of sticks with you, that you hear kind of as they're playing, and you're like, that really doesn't sound like it should be there. And this kind of, a lot of this comes down to just having the ear and knowing what you're listening for. And also, just a quick side note with stuff like EQ, stuff, anything dealing with what you're actually hearing. Um, you may not feel like you have a great ear for audio, but that is something that can be developed, and that is something that's going to come more with practice. And especially with stuff like EQ, the more that you learn about this, the more that you kind of practice the use of it, the more you're going to know exactly what you're listening for. So don't worry about that if you feel like you're maybe in that category. So subtractive is this idea of taking away these bad frequencies. So you're listening to this electric guitar, but then you're hearing this weird ringing that's maybe coming from a higher frequency. And I'll show you more when we're actually looking at the board, but there's really effective ways to take out those bad frequencies. So you're just hearing exactly what you want to hear. It's perfect. Additive is just exactly, these are both exactly what they sound like. Additive is just adding in frequencies that you need. So like the best example of this is, say, your bass guitar is maybe a little transparent. You're not hearing, it doesn't sound like thick, it doesn't sound full. You're not hearing everything that you want to hear from your bass. So you go in and you add in some of the lower frequencies because they're there, you're just boosting them. So you're hearing a little bit more, it sounds a little more full. Everybody wins. So that's the idea of subtractive and additive, and that's most of what you're going to be doing, is either taking away bad frequencies or adding in missing or needed frequencies. So that's kind of the idea, is that you're manipulating the audio. You're changing it. You're changing the frequencies, adding or subtracting the frequencies to get exactly the sound that you're wanting. That's the whole idea of EQ. But something you should know about EQ, this is a good thing for you to hold on to, is that EQ cannot fix bad audio, but it can make good audio great. So the good news for you is that your equipment, all the equipment that you have is really solid. So you're not going to have to really worry too much about bad audio just from the pure, if someone's singing into a microphone, it's going to sound good because the equipment is good. So you don't have to worry too much about the bad audio. But it can make good audio great. It can also make good audio really bad. So EQ is not it's not the fix or the band-aid on something, but it is a tool that you can use to make something better or make something worse if you're not careful with it. So that's kind of the question, is like, is there something as too much EQ? And yes, there is, but honestly, like, that's one of those things that you kind of have to feel out. Like if you're listening to something and it doesn't really sound like it needs that much, like don't fall into this idea that everything needs EQ or everything needs a lot of EQ. There's some things that don't need any equalization because they already sound great the way they are and they fit well in the mix the way that they are. But you definitely can do too much. You can take out too many frequencies so that you're really not hearing much of anything. It's basically like you just decrease the volume. You can add in too many frequencies so you're hearing stuff in that particular channel, instrument, or voice that you don't want to hear. So you can do too much or not enough with it. But yeah, just the thing is, like, there's not really a clear explanation of like, oh, this is too much. It's just the basic idea is that you don't want to take away a lot, you don't want to add a lot. You want to go with what's already there and just change small parts of it to get it to a better place. So yeah, there definitely can be too much, and honestly, a lot of that comes with practice. And I'll show you that more on the board. It'll make more sense when I can actually show you the board, because I can show you a setting that would be like way too much EQ, or a setting that maybe wouldn't be like doing much at all. So that'll make more sense when I can actually show it to you, but the idea is that yes, you can have too much EQ. And also some things don't need EQ. Some channels will not need an equalization. Like a lot of people I know, particularly on like their overhead mics for their drums, they don't do any EQ, which makes sense because it's picking up like everything. Um, so not everything is going to need it. And again, that kind of comes with practice. That kind of just comes down to you listening, you being an engineer, hearing something, and deciding, okay, does this really need to be changed? Is there anything about this that I don't like? And that comes in time too. So don't worry too much about that. Don't worry too much about having the ear, because that can come with practice. So no worries. You got this. But yeah, everything doesn't need EQ. You can have too much EQ. You're mainly going to be using it to add or subtract. And hopefully, if this doesn't make sense right now, again, you can always comment, ask questions. But if this doesn't make sense right now, I think it'll make more sense when we can actually look at the board together. But this is just kind of an idea so you know what EQ is doing. I want to say this phrase again just so you can kind of hold on to it. EQ can't fix bad audio, but it can make good audio great, or it can make good audio really bad. And that's kind of like, that's your plumb line here, is like, it's not going to fix something that's already bad, but it can make something good really great. Yeah, so I hope that helps. And again, this should make a lot more sense when we're actually looking at the board together. So looking forward to that.